Hey there, hope everything's going well. A little different video today. Sometimes I talk politics, culture, all that stuff, but as one of the owners of the company Speak AI, you can check it out, speakai.co. There's been something I've been interested in experimenting with through the last few months, and that has been localizing, translating our main website to multiple languages with the goal to extend the reach, to localize the content on those pages to match the search queries that people are making when they search in their native language. And one of the reasons why this is so important for us is we have 100 plus supported languages for transcription, for translation directly in the application. And just as an example, one of our pages that ranks, it's video to text converter. But if I am in Spain, I'm not typing that exact query. I'm typing the native language version of that query. And as the space has gotten more and more competitive, one of the edges that's possible here is by localizing the content, you're more likely to appear higher up in the search engine rankings for those results. And lots of other issues with search engines right now and ChatGPT and eating up some of those searches and all of this. But at a core, you're continuously trying to compete to find high quality terms. And what's nice for us here at Speak AI is we've identified some of those terms, like video to text converter, video to text AI. Those are ones that convert well for us. So how can we get more of those? And then because we already know they're high converting, it makes a lot of sense for us to just translate those into our top languages so that they perform even better. That query performs even better. We get more of it. And because we have the language support for the transcription and translation, it's an easy flow in for someone to make that query, sign up for the platform, achieve that, and hopefully the experience is delightful enough that they register and become a customer at Speak. So this isn't just about me. I actually wanted to walk you through a bit of this process and the thinking on it that allowed me to get to specifically the platform that I use, which is TranslatePress, and then a little bit of the process that we have undergone so that if you're ever considering something like this, maybe you get some of the headache out of the way, you avoid some crucial mistakes because, on a larger site, something like ours, I think 25,000 pages, you start translating all these pages and you're creating errors. That can be huge challenges for the structure of your site, for the overall performance of the site. You might have to be doing redirects, and there's a lot of core challenges that can emerge if you do this the wrong way. I had never gone through this process before, and so started off with that ChatGPT search, a very long conversation to help me whittle down what platforms were possibly the best. And I talked about, okay, here's how many pages I have, here's what I'm a little bit worried about. And then there were a couple considerations that were important as I went to select the actual platform. So ended up with a few options that populated on these screens. So I started to explore each one of these. I have a little Google Doc that I turned this into. I ended up with a bunch of the platforms there, and then I even pulled the website itself, moved on to the reviews, and through that, isolated that pick with TranslatePress. And so I'll share these links for you. I think this one has been one of the most popular ones. Over time, it appears that the actual quality of this may have degraded. And that was something that I saw pretty consistently. Again, Trustpilot, not always the best place to get reviews because you don't have to have too much verification or anything like that. But at a core level, you take a look. 2 out of 5, this is a pretty low rating. There must be something to consider here. And lots of people talking about corruption with the website, incompatibility, and right there was an immediate flag for me that I probably need to move on from this. Then I moved to Polylang. Same thing. I had seen some good pieces about that, was obviously recommended by ChatGPT itself. You wonder exactly how it comes to that recommendation, but obviously finds the top platforms that people are looking at. And looked okay overall. Was a little concerned with the site and the polish of it. And then moved on to this other piece, which was, okay, there's only one review. So what's going on here? Why is there not enough reviews? And to me, that was an immediate flag. So I continued on my journey. I ended up on Weglot. This one started to seem more interesting to me. Nice site. If I look at the reviews, 4.9, 1,300 reviews, some high quality pieces there. And then what I was considering here was now starting to move on to the actual pricing itself. There's a couple core things that stuck out to me. One, which was the actual fee. And there was something, I'll touch on this a bit. This was important to me. I wanted to translate the actual URL. So what does this mean? I wanted to translate the slug. So if I was to look at a page like video to text converter here, I wanted to take this actual content itself and be able to translate it into the localized version of that because it would rank better. So I'm changing the language here right now, and we'll see you've got the NL and then you've got video. Now, obviously I can't say this, but this is how someone would search for it in their native language. And if the URL is also up there, there's a high chance that you're going to perform better in the search results. So that was a big priority for me. And just to achieve that on Weglot, I believe that's how you pronounce it, I had to move up to $79 per month. And there was some questions around what happens if I remove this plugin. Is all this stored in my database and the translation content remains? Translation memory, which you can see this is only at the extended version and moving up to the enterprise. And then even the number of words that were included. So this one seemed to refresh, say 200,000 per month at that range. But I knew that I had a lot of content and a lot of pages that I needed to translate. And so that wasn't going to be sufficient for me. So that's when I moved on to the Press platform. What I liked about this, there was a little demo site so I could understand how this works. Had good reviews overall. There was not as many reviews on Trustpilot, but there was enough that I felt confident that there was real support. And you can see even those comparisons, it starts to stick out for that 4.4. The quality was pretty high. What converted me, there was this nice design and pieces there, but there was integrations with different models, which I liked. It was compatible with Elementor, which is the WordPress page builder that I'm using on the platform itself. I also knew DeepL was the platform. I was able to translate the slugs, the URLs itself, and it was a much more affordable price at only $199 per year. Now, there are some things I'll touch about as I go through the actual process here to consider, but overall, from a surface level, this seemed the best deal available and the most sufficient platform for the needs that I had. And again, the reviews back that up. They also had their own comparison. Obviously, there's always biases in this type of content, but something worthwhile to check out, even if you're going through this exercise yourself. And again, that piece about being stored in your database, super valuable. The fact that I could do it all automatically, very important. Will you keep your translations if you stop paying? And you can see a couple of those don't give you that availability. You could edit the translations after. And as we saw when we visited my site there's this very nice toggle that automatically detects what browser or language you're using and then points you to that version of the page with that little slash there, in this case being Dutch. And now if I want to go to Francais, the same thing, very easily toggles me through. So I knew I wanted to do automatic translation. I didn't want to do each page first. And so the question for myself was, okay, I've got 25,000 pages. What's the MVP that I want to test here? How do I prioritize what pages I do and what languages I do? And so this is something I recommend if you have the capability. This is a platform called Looker Studio. It pulls in my Google Analytics. And because I have conversion tracking set up, passing analytics through the platform itself, I can see what languages are generating me the most revenue. So I'm just looking at a very small date period here, and I'm splitting it into very tiny segments because I'm looking at the language code here itself. But basically, if I wanted to inspect this a little bit further, you can see language code, the sessions there, and then again, pulling that event value through just to give you that context there. And then I'm sorting by, in this case, successful registrations, which is a valuable sign for me. But in the end, I care about, okay, great, maybe a ton of people signed up for the platform, but did they generate revenue? And so this is why I'm now looking at the event value. So I can see English, Spanish, French, and then I made a little bit of money from someone who was traversing the website in Russian. So this is the browser that they're using, what language they're using that browser. And so immediately that allowed me to say, hey, I want to prioritize these specific languages first. Let's do an MVP, translate some of my top pages into these languages and see if we get any performance out of it. So I had some clarity on what languages I wanted to translate, but then next I needed to choose what pages do I want to translate. And so now I've got another view in the same page. I'm just looking again the last 7 days, and I can see what pages are obviously driving sessions on the site. Let's go back to this event value filter. There's a little bit of discrepancy in this because I'm looking at data from the most recent 7 days, which means that I already have pages that are translated. You can see these populating. And what's great is these are operating off the main domain here, but I was able to very quickly look and say, hey, here's what pages are driving the most traffic, then the most registrations, what's the conversion rate of those pages, and then what's the event value. So I was able to take that view out, export that into a Google Sheet, and then pull all these top pages. And very quickly, there was 2 ways that I viewed what pages should I translate. Obviously, ones that are top revenue producers, that seems quite clear. And then also just pages that were across that main menu or in the footer of the website itself. And so with that list, I was able to create a list of 200 of my top pages on the site. I specifically also wanted to add the how to transcribe pages because of all the different languages there, localizing those further. And then to translate the home page itself, you can use this double bracket to make this happen. Now, this is where we end up in the platform in Speak. And I can see in the tools there, I've got my TranslatePress, and you can see I've started to add more languages. As I saw this starting to work, I continued to scale up the number of languages that I wanted to do. So generally, these are all the languages that have generated me some revenue. And if I wanted to add more, I would just say, hey, I'm going to do Bulgarian. I'm going to add it to the site. You're going to see the default code that is there. And now I have added the platform itself. I'm not going to go do that for now. I've added enough languages and I'm still flowing through. And this is where I'll talk about some of the cost piece. I have this automatic translation turned on, and you can see in TranslatePress, there is basically a quota of words that you can do. And so I can see in here, I'm able to add extra words. You can see the cost of doing that. So they're showing 25% off. Great little pricing hack there. And I can add those extra 500,000 words, and that will be added right here. And then it will work through your quota. So there's a couple important pieces here to consider. One is that you can limit the number of machine translation characters you do per day. Generally, I would say how many characters in a word, we'll say 5 on average, so 100,000 words per day I'm translating, and you can see it's going through that. Right now, you can see the languages that are running through, and it's just going to keep pumping out those translations as long as you have that quota available. And this is where it can get a bit pricey. I thought that I could use the alternative engine and then use a different model for the pricing, and it would be the cheaper cost for that. It appears that you still need to have a quota available even to tap into that model. So that's where they get you. It's a great business model by them. A little nasty from a cost side, but from my perspective, Google search, when someone comes organically through, the conversion rate of that and the trust level of that is often much higher than coming through a Google ad. And so I allocated some of my Google advertising budget to getting this translation done and getting these pages out and ranking, which I'm seeing them do, and they're already generating revenue for us, which is fantastic. The other great piece about this is that there's this SEO pack here that manages the page slug, the title, the description, translates everything there for you. The HTML lang attribute, which is an important part of this setting, is properly set and manages a lot of these pieces here that are super valuable to not just translate the pages, but get them ready to rank on search engines and contribute to the business. So definitely worthwhile and part of the package when you buy that premium version. Now, the other piece I wanted to touch on here is one, which is first browser language. This is a great way that it will detect what language you're using and then redirect to that, or at least recommend that setting. And that's when you'll see the pop-up there. You have some more customization that you can make. But I think the more important one that I wanted to touch on specifically here is there's ways that they've given you to exclude specific strings or include them. Strings being actual content that could be on the page. TranslatePress does a great job where if they've already translated that string, that button call to action or whatever, you're not repaying for those words. So a great way to save your quota there, reduce costs. And then the second piece is I only wanted to translate certain paths, meaning what pages, the pages that I had chosen from this list were our top and most valuable pages. I dropped those into a list here, just under 200 versus the 20,000 plus that were on my site, which that quota is going to get eaten up super quickly and it's going to be very cost prohibitive for me. And then I was able to save those changes. And so when I go back to that automatic translation, I can now see that it's running through and it's only picking those core pages. So that is like the process of getting things live. And then you've already seen that experience where you visit the site, depending what browser, it's either going to redirect or it's going to pop up this, hey, you're in this language, but we can see that you are Italiano, and then we'll redirect. And what you're always going to see there is, in this case, you've got FR for France or French. In this case, I believe IT, we're going to see, there we go, and then convertio deve testo. Now, obviously, translation accuracy is something to be considered. This is an iframe, so it wasn't able to translate this. But overall, it takes the structure, and this was hugely important, the Elementor design that we had built, and translated it very nicely to fit that structure. And so I'm overall super happy. Can I tell that this flows perfectly? No. Do I have the ability to pay people to inspect every word that's translated and make sure this is perfect and right on? No. So to me, this was still a great start to localize this. And you can see all this content is now localized, translated, and I can show you, I'll jump here in a second, that this is now ranking on search engines and creating results for the business. Happy with overall start of the process. A couple things that make me a little nervous. There's a cached version when you first translate the slug, and so it would be like IT and it would still say video to text converter. And in some cases, that cached version was getting pushed to the Google Search Console, the search engine. I was getting worried, hey, is this creating an area where this redirect needs to be created, or there's a 404 error? Seems they are handling that process, and generally it seems to be resolved. And so then what I'll do, I'll take you into how do we look at this. So I'm looking at the last 7 days. I've got 4,000 clicks. I can see what pages are now starting to rank. And immediately right off the top, if I was just to take a quick look at this, you can say, interesting, the homepage with the French, with the Spanish, I can see some Arabic has started, and you can see the translated URL there. I believe the Dutch are ranking and taking at least a decent percentage of that traffic now. What's fascinating here is this traffic, a lot of this page specifically, is a little bit more branded. And it just seems like those are the people who are in French, who are typing this, who are eating up that branded version or that localized version of the page where they would have gone to the home page before. My belief is that in some cases, this is outperforming that English homepage version. And so I'm still very happy to take up that search. It was scary at the start. When you first look at this, you make this change and you're not just looking at the English versions of the pages. And so your analytics starts to get a little wonky. And I'm still having to sort through this process because now instead of one video to text converter page, which I know the video to text AI is a high driver of my traffic there, is now a whole series of pages. So how do I analyze that all together versus the one page like I was doing before? That's a big question that I have to almost manually create these groups of pages, which is not so easy. There's a manual setup that would have to take place to do that. But I have a couple options. With my Looker Studio, I have a little bit more control over filters. So what's great here is I've got a filter on my Google Search Console data in my Looker Studio, and I can go in here, I can add this filter, and I can say, hey, I only want to look at the translated pages. And so now when I filter this down, you can see in the last 7 days, the specific translated. Now, I don't even think I have all of these setups, just if you wanted to take a quick look at that filter to see how did I set that up. All I'm doing is manually going through and saying landing page contains that little slash. And I need to add more of these now because I've translated more language and they'll start to appear in the data. Now this reset, let's go back to my last 7 days here again. And these pages continue to populate. This one looks messy. I apologize. I hate looking at this one because it's the Arabic version, but you can see that there are real impressions driving. Many of these pages have recently gone live. You can see there are clicks to those pages. In general, those are trending up. It seems like there is still this excitement when it first ranks and then a little bit of volatility. And then you can even see, obviously, the position of these pages. This is what I was talking about where the PT, how to transcribe a YouTube video. And then over time, you see that graduate. I believe this one was just translated. This will translate into more like this, where it's the ES and then the Portuguese version of it. So this was what was creating a bit of concern for me here. Again, it does seem like it resolves, and I can see that in the Google Search Console. And I'll pull this up as an example, that it does seem to resolve. I can go into my Google search query, say that's indexed And then I can see, there you go. There's that PT, the translated version of it. And so that's the user declared canonical, and that eventually graduates and is done properly. And if I was to inspect this page itself, I can see that it's indexed, there we go, served properly, and even metadata is accurate as well. And what's great, if now I go and I have a bunch of ways that I've set these pieces up, I go back to my landing pages and performance, looking at Google Analytics, I can start to see, okay, these translated versions are beginning to rank, and in some cases generating even small revenue, which is fantastic to see. So with that in mind, that's a little video on automatic WordPress translation using TranslatePress. I hope you got something insightful out of this. I went through some real data, pages, the process that I went through, maybe some other platforms to consider. Ultimately, I landed on that TranslatePress platform, and overall, I've been pretty pleased with the process. I'm still relatively early in it, so maybe I'll give an update at some point here. But again, I think a great way to get more reach by localizing that content, translating to the way that they're searching for things online, people in different areas, making sure that it matches that language, drive impressions, drive traffic, drive conversions, and ultimately drive revenue for your business. So thanks so much for checking this video out. As always, I'd love to hear what you think. Any questions, thoughts, I'm here. This has been Tyler Bryden going over automatic WordPress translation using TranslatePress. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Bye-bye.